Thanks a lot. I had my first association with the Fire Brigades Union over 30 years ago when I started, as has been said at Thompson's, as a very young Green article clerk. That was in the aftermath of the 1977-78 appalling strike that should never have happened. But it showed solidarity within the union. Throughout the years of Mrs. Thatcher and all the threats to the fire service then, solidarity within this union. And I regret to say, the problems of recent years under our government. But throughout all that, the FBU has come through as strong as ever, as united as ever, and as prepared to stand up for its members as it ever had. Now, I think that the FBU is an example to the trades union movement. We've seen other unions wilt and collapse, but the FBU remains strong and fights for the things that it believes in, fights for its members' jobs and rights, but more importantly, fights for the rights of the average citizen out there who depends on your services. I understand that the union commissioned a survey from YouGov of FBU members. 93% of you, surprise, surprise, said that the fire and rescue service must stop cutting frontline personnel to provide a coherent, effective and safe response. I don't think anybody would disagree with that, and I'm just surprised that it's as low as 93%, because I think if you ask that question of the general public, you get 99.9% agreeing with that proposition. We're told that a senior civil servant said to the DCLG Select Committee that slower attendance times don't equate to a worse service. Well, I suppose it depends what you mean by a worse service. If it means you end up having to put out bigger fires at greater risk to yourselves and greater exposure to damage and injury to the public, I suppose that's a better service because you're doing a bigger job. But I don't think the public would thank you for it. If it means dealing with more complex emergencies because you're late getting there, again, a bigger, more efficient, I suppose, job, but I don't think the public would thank you for it. I think the public would see that as the worst service that it actually is. And I think that any suggestion that lower attendance times means a worse service to the public does not equate to worse service to the public. It is complete nonsense. And in the real world, the frontline staff aren't those who go first. In the real world, backroom costs, backroom staff, senior managers are those who go first. And I find it absolutely bizarre that while the fire service can employ 5,000 more people, we've seen 3.5% reduction in the number of whole-time firefighters. It's a bit like Tesco's packing their board, yet not filling the shelves, not having the checkout staff. Because in the end, a fire service is only as good as its firefighters, not as good as its chief fire officer. Now we've got this enormous project, the Fire Control Project. Its costs have escalated. Originally £100 million, not anyone really believed that at the time. It's now £1.4 billion. It's years and years behind. And I find it absolutely amazing that Councillor Brian Coleman, and you can boo, I've known him longer than you have because my constituency is in Barnet, which sends him to our shame to the GLA. Even Councillor Brian Coleman, his taxi expenses are even dwarfed by this bill, which is saying something. He says that the project is fast becoming a white elephant. Well, it's not fast. It's taken a bit of a time to wake up to that. But it is certainly, I would agree with him, time to end the uncertainty and abandon this expensive and unnecessary scheme. We've seen the government drop other flagship schemes, like the ID cards, other things we don't approve of. So why persist in wasting money in this way? Why not use the money, a fraction of the money, to upgrade and improve the existing fire controls, who know their areas well, know how to mobilise the fire service, and make sure that the public is kept safe. Now, John, great speaker. He speaks for people in the Labour Party who may not be quite mainstream. But I can tell you, I speak for the mainstream voice of Labour MPs. And I hope that when you go over that road and lobby your Labour MPs, you'll get the same response from them as you've had from me, because I think you will. And I also counsel you, just remember, we may have problems with the Labour government, but just think what will happen if the Tories get back in next year, because they are committed to wholesale cuts across the board from day one in public services. And do not think the fire service will be exempt from that. You may have arguments with the Labour government. I have arguments with the Labour government. Most MPs have arguments with the Labour government, but I can tell you they are nothing compared to the arguments we would have with the Tories on the fire services behalf if they were to get back. So I wish you luck with your lobbying. Make sure your MPs get the message. Stop the fire control project. Support the fire service. Make sure we have national standards. Make sure we have the resources you need to do the job. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Before we move to our final speaker, if I can just announce that once people are over into the Palace of Westminster, we do have a committee room 16, that will be available throughout the afternoon for people to assemble, for people to take their Member of Parliament if they need somewhere to go with them. So we have that booked all afternoon. Our final speaker is our own General Secretary, Matt Rank.